this like changed my life, literally has changed my life. I had buried that trauma. And I'm telling you, if you have trauma in your life and you don't deal
Yes.
with it, it will manifest itself in illness. My body attacking itself, and all of a sudden I have lupus like that. That's the trauma I never had dealt with. I can use food as medicine. I can use food to change my life and get off the prescriptions that I was on.
Amy Lacey is a founder, investor, and author best known as the pioneer of the cauliflower pizza crust, a billion-dollar category and movement to create a healthy frozen product in the mostly unhealthy frozen section of the grocery store. After selling her first company, Cauliflower Foods, Amy is now focusing on Be Me, a superfood supplement company to fill the gap lacking in the food industry by introducing the healing powers of a miracle fruit, the soursop.
You must invest in yourself. You must be coached. Even if you're a coach, even if you think you've got it all together, you must have somebody like what you do in your life. It's imperative.
Do you want to build a truly extraordinary life, what we call an exponential life? My weekly newsletter brings you insights, stories, expert conversations, my favorite books and podcasts every Sunday. Subscribers get exclusive access to my monthly group coaching webinars, all for free. And for the cost of a latte a month, you can help support our work and access our full archives. Subscribe at christianrayflores.com. Amy, thanks for coming on. I have been looking forward to it for a few weeks now, actually, because I love your story.
I'm so honored to be here, and I'm so excited that we got to meet because I can see that we're going to work together in the future and how beneficial your coaching is. And it's funny how God puts people in your lives for a short season to meet somebody that's probably going to be in your life for a long season. And I think that's what's happened here, to be honest with you.
Wow, that's so exciting. Thank you. Okay, so the Cauliflower Foods, tell me how that came to be.
Okay, so a little bit of a backstory. I won't go into my childhood, but at some point we probably should because it is very relevant to why I got sick to begin with. So Halloween night, Halloween day was a Saturday, 2015. I could not get out of bed. Now, I have this tradition. I'm a mom of 3, been married 26 years. And because I didn't have a family when I was a child, I made all these family traditions that were very, very important to me. So one of them was Friday family fun night, pizza and board games.
Okay.
So we did that October 30th. October 31st, Halloween, I wake up, I cannot move. I cannot get out of bed. Like I'm crawling to the bathroom. I'm in so much pain. My body's attacking me. We were supposed to go to a Halloween party. I asked my husband to take the kids. I couldn't get out of bed. I remember I did I had not accepted Jesus. This is also very relevant because I believe that he had his hand in this business and in my life when I didn't even realize who he was. But that day, I was really started to get kind of bored in bed and definitely bedridden all day. And I was going through my emails, and my kid's piano teacher accidentally sent me Beth Moore's Book of James study to do because she was sending it out to her Bible study group, and I was not in the Bible group.
So
But
so this is literally, she didn't even intend to do that.
No, she did not. So I only knew her from being my kid's piano teacher. They took piano lessons at the school they went to, which was a private school. She had a Bible study that she did with a regular group of women. One of them was named Amy with her last name started with an L. So she accidentally, there are no accidents, right?
Right.
Accidentally sent me the Book of James by Beth Moore. And I was really bored. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to this. And in the middle, and my kids are gone. They're at the Halloween party with my husband. So I'm home alone. In the middle of Beth Moore, the Book of James study, which is a great study, she says, have you accepted Jesus into your life? And I was like, no, I don't even know Jesus. I didn't grow up with religion. I converted to Catholicism to marry my husband. But there's something so overwhelming. I went ahead and said it out loud. And I say this story because this changed my life, literally has changed my life. So I would love to say that immediately after accepting Jesus, I was able to jump out of bed and I felt really good, but that is not at all what happened. I went on to be, I accepted Jesus that day, and I actually felt something inside of me. I can honestly look back and say I felt something really strong inside of me. Didn't tell anyone, just went ahead and did the study. That week, I was able, because my husband's a physician and we lived in a small town, he was able to get me into a rheumatologist, and I was able to find out that I had lupus.
Oh,
And what do doctors do? I mean, in defense of doctors, if they work for the hospital system, they're not really given a lot of time to spend on treating the patients. So the quickest thing to do is give them a pill. So immediately he put me on steroid shots, Plaquenil, which was the drug everybody was talking about during COVID, um, and then a water pill. And long story short, I basically couldn't walk for like 9 months. I was super depressed.
oh
I was so
wow.
depressed. They ended up putting me on Wellbutrin. If ever there was like a low in my life where I thought about suicide, it would definitely have been this time. My youngest was only 2 and I couldn't even pick him up. I couldn't take care of him. So my rock bottom low point was when he had to go stay with my in-laws. Now I lived in Northern California and my in-laws lived in Virginia. So clear across the country, my 2-year-old's gone for a couple months.
Oh
That was
man.
like a very low, because in my life I had had some other businesses, but my whole purpose was definitely mom, wife, have a family that I never had. Okay, so I'm depressed. I'm like, only I am going to be able to take care of myself and put my health into my hands and change my life. So I thought I can use food as medicine. I can use food to change my life and get off the prescriptions that I was on. And so I went looking to bring back that family fun night again, that pizza. And I think the day that I got really sick, I think the night before we had like Domino's pizza. I mean, we weren't eating healthy pizza. And there was really nothing healthy in the grocery store. There was Udi's. That was about it in the
Yeah,
grocery store
the
at the
only
time.
thing that's probably like gluten free ish.
Yeah, it was gluten free, but
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
the fillers in that are
Is that right?
worse than Domino's pizza for me. But yeah, so I found a recipe online. So full circle moment. I found it on Rachel Ray's website for using cauliflower for a cauliflower pizza crust. Fast forward during Cauliflower, we end up being on Rachel Ray for her food bank.
Is that right?
Yeah, we contributed to the food bank and we were on. So it was like a full circle moment. But going back to that, it's about 9 months. I start getting healthy. I start changing the way I'm eating. I go gluten free, grain free. I did an elimination diet to figure out what was causing the inflammation that was attacking my body. And it turns out it was not just gluten free, but also grain free. And so there really isn't a lot out there at the time. So I did this cauliflower pizza crust. It turned out to be a complete disaster the first few times I made it, and then I figured out how to perfect it. Fast forward, I end up getting off all my medications. I lose like 48 pounds. I'm the healthiest I've been, and I'm like, okay, I want to pay it forward. I want to coach people that are like type 2 diabetics, that have lupus, that I want to help people. So I started doing these healthy happy hours in Northern California with the pizza crust and like smoothies and things like that. No alcohol, healthy happy hours. And I
Right.
started helping people. And one of my clients said, take this to farmers market. So we took it to farmers market. And because I had this one client, now I'm getting, this is how the company went viral. So this is an important story. And I believe it's such a, it was a word that I got. It was a dream that I got from God. So it's really important for me to give you a little bit of the background. So the company is at farmers market and a couple grocery stores have picked it up, and I've taken it online. This is now 2016
Okay.
and it's late 2016. And I have this single mom of 4 kids reaching out to me, lives about an hour away, saying, "Can you send me my pizza crust? Because can you donate pizza crust?" Because my youngest child, Kenzie, is nonverbal autistic, and the doctor just put her on a low carb diet. And I'm seeing all over Northern California that your pizza crust is low carb. Would you be willing to do that? I said, absolutely, because my mom was a single mom, really struggled. It's part of my
Yep.
background
Me
story.
too. Me too.
And yeah, so I'm single mom's near and dear to my heart. So we start sending her a bunch of pizza crusts, and And that was like earlier in 2016. So
Now, by
I'm
this point, let me pause for a second. So you
yeah.
started the company. You're now expanding because demand is there, correct?
Yes.
Now, are you sort of a local sensation right now in
Not
just
really.
California?
I mean, we were written up in a local magazine.
Yeah.
Everybody knew who we were at Farmers Market that went to Farmers Market because I would get pre-orders.
Ah,
But to give you the perspective of what our sales were, the margins were horrible. And because we were getting popular and we were in grocery stores, I had to go beyond a cottage license, which is the first step that you do
that's
in your
right.
house.
Okay.
And I had to rent a space and a kitchen, a commercial kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I had to hire a co-packer to help me in that commercial kitchen because it was too much for me to do by myself to
Yeah.
fill the
Yeah.
orders.
Yeah.
But to give you perspective, and at the end of 2016, I was negative $269,000 in the
Oh,
business. The margins were horrible. And I had used up all of our savings account. And to go, you know, we have been sending crust to Jessie for like 7 months, the mom, the single mom.
yeah.
So at the end of 2016, and it's actually January 3rd, 2017. Sorry, people, stay with me. I promise it's worth it. January 3rd, 2017, I'm on my hands and knees. First time I ever get on my hands and knees and pray. And I'm like, God, please in this business because I can't. And I'm negative 269,000. I cannot, like, I've wiped out our savings account. We were remodeling our house and we hadn't done the garage yet. So that was 80,000. I wiped that out. So we weren't going to have a garage. I'm like, I cannot go into my husband was sleeping and snoring like in the bed. And I was on the floor on my hands and knees praying. And just remember looking at him with tears, thinking, I cannot go into our retirement. So I
Right.
said, God, please shut this business down or make it super successful, one or the other, because I don't have the heart to shut it down because I was helping all these type 2 diabetics and moms like Jessie. And it was very fulfilling, but monetarily not fulfilling. But because like
Yes.
Jessie, we were giving her crust. Well, that night on January 3rd, I had a dream. So after I was praying, I got in bed, went to sleep, had a dream, and I never remember my dreams. It was so vivid. And it said, tell Jessie's story. So I woke up the next day. I had one employee and I called her and I said, I think we're supposed to share Jessie's story. And she's like, well, you better ask Jessie. Well, now going back to Jessie's story, she had been eating our crust for 7 months.
Okay.
And when I went up there to visit her and she opened the door, I about fell over. In 7 months, Jessie had lost 100 pounds eating low carb. Now I know that's not healthy and I'm not promoting weight loss like that, but that's the truth of her story. And Kenzie ran up to me and gave me a hug and said, thank you. She was actually talking
She
and Kenzie
was.
had been nonverbal. And Jessie's like, I'm so excited because Kenzie can go to public school now with an aide because she's actually talking. So we shared that story. My one employee said, you better ask Jessie. And I remember this like it was yesterday. Jessie said, I will be the Jessie of Cauliflower Foods, like the Jared of Subway without the perversion. She was so excited for us to share her story.
Without the perversion, I like that.
If you remember Jared from
I do
Subway,
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, for your younger crowd here, they may not remember that, but yeah, he was the spokesperson for Subway and then he got himself into trouble. So Jessie was all excited. And I thought, okay, I've got the green light. I'll share her story on Facebook. Never in a million years did I think it would go viral. I just wanted to share her story. And we used a platform called Story Brand. Actually, I used
Yeah.
Donald Miller's
Donald Miller. Yeah. Hmm.
Story Brand. So for your audience out there, read his book, listen to his podcast, take his course, whatever you want to do. But and maybe you even coach on story. I'm not sure, but telling story is so powerful. And we were telling different customers their success stories, like the type 2 diabetic that got off of insulin. But this particular story of Kenzie and Jessie together went viral. And so in January of 2017, and remember, I just accepted Jesus in 2015.
Okay.
In January of 2017, we sold more in that month than we had the entire year of 2016. And literally, this is the dream I had after getting on my hands and knees and praying.
And you were asking, you were saying, shut it down or make it
Shut
big.
it down or make it uber successful. So we shared that story 3 days later after I had that dream, and by the end of that month, we had sold more than we had the entire year of 2016. What's really crazy is by the end of 2017, we had done $5.3 million in pizza crust sales.
Oh,
And by the
wow.
end of 2018, we did over 21 million. So I never built the business to be a business. I built it just to be at the local farmers market and to help a few people. And I never, when I was in debt to the tune of 269,000 and I had wiped out our savings and so forth and racked up credit card debt, I was so mad at myself because I was like, how did I let myself do this? Like
Yeah.
my
That's
ego.
that's a classic entrepreneurial journey thing.
Yeah.
Like, I've been mad
Well,
at myself a lot in
yeah,
life.
I'm like, this is my ego. Like, I'm boosting my ego because these people love my
Yeah.
product, but I'm hurting my family and we're going into debt.
Yes.
And God answered my prayer. I mean, I can't, there's nothing else that could have happened, but God had his hand on that business. There is no way. If I could sit here for hours and tell you all the different Jesse type stories that we had, it's an incredible journey, but the doors that opened couldn't have been opened without God's hand on this business. So it it is just a crazy journey, but I can go back to my childhood or I can go to the sale of cauliflower. Both again are just
Let's talk about the sale of Cauliflower, because that
okay.
sort of wraps up that chapter,
Okay.
which is a really important chapter.
Okay. So
And I want to know, because I know you can't. I don't. Can you tell us the exact amount for which you
I
sold or no?
cannot I signed that's so funny. You're lately people have been asking me that.
There's
And
probably an
I
NDA involved
I
or something like that.
signed
Yeah.
paperwork, and honestly, I don't trust the venture capitalists that purchased it, not to look for a reason to
Can you
come
give us
after
like
me.
a ballpark, or like at
So
least
8
how many
figures.
8 figures?
It was
Okay.
8-figure sale. So what happened was I lived in Northern California, Chico, California to be exact, and we had the office there for the pizza crust. We had the industrial kitchen. We didn't own it, but we had a great co-packer at this point. The margins were good. We were working with local farmers in the Salinas Valley. We had a manufacturing facility in Salinas Valley area as well. And then we had a little restaurant that we would test kitchens or test recipes in. It was a little test kitchen that we had in a local grocery store that was kind of like a Whole Foods locally.
Got it.
Well, the town next to Chico is the town of Paradise. And in November of 2018, that town burned down. Like a massive fire burned the whole entire town down.
Wow.
My mom, my stepdad, and my aunt, who has no children, my uncle had passed away, they all lived in that town. So they evacuated and they came to my house with their animals. And what happened is the whole town burned down, but their houses didn't actually burn down, but they couldn't live in them because there was no running water, no electricity, and it wasn't safe. So they didn't get the insurance money and they can't sell their house. And nobody in my family has any money. So I saw that as a sign again. I had been praying on it. I was the CEO of the company. I was gone a lot. Again, I have 3 kids. I value family so much. So I had been praying on how to kind of maybe hire a CEO, cut back. When the fire happened, I saw that as a sign. Well, I've been offered some money from various different people. Maybe it's time for me to sell. And I had no investors. I owned the company full out. I had EBITDA. We were very profitable. So, it was easy for me to sell it. And I had offers. So I went ahead and accepted an offer from some venture capitalists out of Boulder, Colorado, Colorado's kind of Denver, Boulder area,
Yep.
very in the natural space food industry. It seemed like a really good fit. And it was an 8-figure deal. And the agreement was that I would take money off the table, but I would also put some of that investment back into the business and that my team would stay in the business, that I would remain in the business. I was going to resign from being the CEO, but I would remain very active in the business, be on the board, and they would never change the recipe. And honestly, right after I sold it, I ended up moving my whole family to Florida and we shut that office down. They wanted to shut the office down. They wanted to shut the restaurant down. By now you can see it in the background. I've done a cookbook. Abrams Publishing actually came to me and said, we want to give you this upfront money to write 2 cookbooks, maybe even more, but we'll start with 2. And the venture capitalists didn't buy that deal. So they shut down the promotion of that cookbook as well. So we started butting heads pretty much right away after I moved to Florida. And ironically, after I moved to Florida, within 6 months, COVID hit.
So this is post sale. You're still
This is
you already
after I've
sold.
sold the company and I've
Yeah.
moved my family out of Northern California.
But you're still involved. Your team is still in the
I'm still
business, etc.
involved.
Got it. Okay.
But right within like 6 months, I started seeing like a lot of red flags and things were changing. And I used to talk openly about God, about my business. I still do now, but back then I talked about it all the time. Like we had a Bible study with a team. I had to build a team, by the way, for a business that large. I had a
Mm-hmm.
team. We had a Bible study, we had a business study. We didn't do things the way a normal company runs, in my opinion. And I poured into them in leadership. I would take them to different courses, and all of that stopped when the venture capitalists came in. And part of the deal with the book is they wanted me to start an Instagram. I never had my own personal Instagram,
Right.
but they wanted me to be on Instagram. So I was on Instagram and TikTok, and I was openly talking about my faith. And the venture capitalist said, no more. You cannot talk about God anymore. No,
Well,
nothing.
and they're thinking of it as something that takes away potential sort of demand because now it's a
Yeah.
larger scale operation,
And I
etc.
understand that. Like,
Yeah.
you don't like, I'm on my next round of my current product, it will have scripture on the bottom of it. I get that. But you can't tell me what I can say on my personal. And they're like, you
They
cannot
were.
talk.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
right,
you
right.
can't talk about God anymore at all, anywhere on your personal. And I was like, no, that I I owe it all to him. Like I know this business happened from him. So when that happened, they got very upset with me and they fired my team and they put me on sabbatical. And when they put me on sabbatical, they changed all my passwords to the company. So I no longer had access to what was happening with the company. And I was still on the board, but they pretty much just eliminated my position in the company.
Right.
And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I insisted on still talking about my faith, along with other things that I didn't agree with what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned from other founders that it's quite typical to butt heads with venture capitalists. Like
Oh,
they're looking,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, they're looking at the bottom line, and I'm looking at customer service all the way. Like the customer experience was so
Yeah.
important to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. Can I
So,
ask you a couple of clarifying
yeah,
questions,
please.
just for the sake of people who are listening, even my sake, right? As I'm a faith guy, right? So
Yeah.
I'm a Jesus follower. I don't hide it. One of the benefits of owning your own gig and not sort of sharing and not
Hmm.
not selling, not having other people that are
Yeah.
stakeholders, is that you make those choices and you're able
Yeah.
to sort of enjoy it and everything. Now, I, from my perspective, I really get why you would do that because especially with your origin story, like it was such a clear turning point that is
Yeah.
completely unmistakable. You can't attribute it to anything else. You can't
Nope.
attribute it to yourself, your talent, strategy,
Mm-mm.
not even the change of an economy. Like you can't literally attribute it to anything
Nope.
else but divine intervention.
Absolutely. 100%.
Obviously, obviously you won't stop talking about it because you know I, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Now, quick question, just strategically. Okay, a VC approaches you and they want you to sell. Does this not come up early before the sell?
Never came up. Isn't that crazy? And let me tell you, the due diligence they do on you, they
Yeah.
found something in my background that I didn't even know existed, like on my credit report somewhere that I never knew about. I mean, they found they knew everything. I've
And this didn't
never,
come up.
and this never came up. My faith
Huh.
never came up. And I shared that story
Do you
with
feel
them.
like they chose to ignore it for the time being and then sort of,
Yep.
press in a little bit
I
later? Is that, do
absolutely
you feel
think
like
they
that's a
thought,
strategic move?
let's get her to sign this and let's get this company and then we'll start dictating. As a matter of fact, one of the high ups in the company accidentally sent an email to everybody and I was included in it. And it literally said, when we get control, we'll figure out what to do with her. I still have that email. I held on to that. Yeah.
Ooh.
And I was
Okay,
the
so this
only
is
her. There were no,
yeah.
it was all males. Let me tell you something that I wish I would have, I
Oh my
figured it
gosh.
out and I wish this should have been, there were so many signs and my gut said, don't do this, but I did it anyways. When I went out to meet them face to face, I was in their boardroom. It was all men and myself. I was the only woman and one other woman that they had there. They planted her there. It was the co-founder's girlfriend. And
Okay.
she pretended to work there and be a part of it. And I could tell by the questions I was asking, she had no idea. Like she didn't understand the industry at all. I still don't think she does, but she does marketing and things for them, but and PR for them. But I literally could tell she was planted there. And
Wow.
it
Interesting.
was kind of an insult. And the day that I signed the contract, it was April 30th of 2019. And I was in San Diego with my whole team. We were at Summit for Dave Ramsey's event. And I had brought my whole team there. And we had just listened to Sarah Blakely and Jesse Itzler. And it was just like, and Simon Sinek, we were on fire. And here I am trying to sign this deal by midnight, which is 3 a.m. on the East Coast. They want it done before April 30th. They changed the valuation of the company on me within hours of signing it. So they devalued the company, which right away I should have known not to sign it.
And that's and just as a caveat, that is a classic VC move.
Mhm.
And I don't want to bedevil all of it, every
No.
VC. There's amazing VCs out there, but my point is this is a classic move where a venture capital firm, they court you, they make
Mhm.
you feel super special, they offer you a good amount of
Exactly.
money, and then it's very high, and it's like this is like a dream come true, all of that, and they almost like suck the air out of the room when it comes to opportunities or other options because it's just so good.
Yeah.
It's just so exciting, and you can do
Yeah.
so much with that money, and your self-esteem goes up, and you go, I did something special. People want this, et cetera, et cetera. And then the classic move is that in the last hour, because it's just so close,
Mhm.
right?
And they knew
Something,
how excited I was.
yeah, they will pull the rug out of from under
Mhm.
you by noting some technicality in whatever. They just find a reason where they go, oh, whoops, we didn't think it through. Actually, this is the number. This is the number.
Yeah.
So they basically do that to you. And can you tell us at least almost like what was the high point compared to the new offer and the new number? Is it half? Is it a
Well,
third? Is
the
it
way that so honestly, we had done over 21 million in sales and we had really good margins, over 40%. We had EBITDA on the books. I hired a financial institute to help me put together the deck. It's very intensive, very long deck showing everything, all your financials, your potential, all of that.
so
So
the evaluation was
the
appropriate?
valuation should have
Yeah.
been a lot higher. It should have
Yeah.
been the deal should have been a 9-figure, not an 8-figure deal. And
Got it.
back then, there weren't a lot of women exiting food companies.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you hear of it now, like Siete just did it,
Mm-hmm.
Nut Pods. And those were like my friends in the food industry. Um,
Really? Okay.
and women are starting to really rise up. But then in 2019, there really weren't a lot of women exiting. Lily's Chocolate had an exit. I mean, there just wasn't a lot. And so I think I was devalued a little bit because I was a woman. Here's another reason why I was devalued, and a valid reason too. We had locked our company, Cauliflower Foods. When I created the name, which actually my daughter created, we were thinking California
Yeah, of
foods,
course.
like foods that replace traditional foods. So, for example, the cauliflower was going to replace white flour, and then we
That's
were
right.
doing zucchini noodles before those were a thing, and that was going to replace pasta. So in my mind, it was like California foods, Cauliflower Foods. It was never meant to be cauliflower or locked in just to cauliflower. But when I launched the company, I was like, well, zucchini noodles are way easier to make than a cauliflower pizza crust. So I'm going to take the harder product to make and put it out in the world because I didn't have enough money to do both. So they said, don't ever lock your like you've locked your company into an ingredient, into a name, cauliflower.
Right.
And I'm like, well,
Right.
not really. That's not what was not my intention. And they said, well, but yeah, it is what it is. And so we're going to change the name eventually, and you can't be locked into an ingredient. So it does hurt your valuation, which is interesting because my new company, we started with the actual fruit, which is Soursop Nutrition. And that was very
Hmm.
intentional. The company's name is Be Me Beyond Medicine. And I know we're going to get to that. And I want to stay with cauliflower. But the point is, if you're thinking about an exit, don't lock your name into an ingredient. We were at an event. We were promoting Soursop Nutrition. We picked the name Soursop Nutrition because nobody knew what Soursop was. So it was an SEO play. But the
Right.
company's name is Be Me Beyond Medicine. We knew that that product was a product in the company. I did not name the company Soursop
That makes
Nutrition.
sense. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you are thinking about exiting, do not have a single ingredient as a name. It will hurt your valuation. But yeah, and then you know what? I don't want to, I can look back now and I see that God's protection was there. The rejection I felt from the venture capitalists when they put me on sabbatical and changed my passwords. At the time, it threw me into a massive depression,
Mm.
which allows me to really talk about my childhood because it threw me in such a depression. Here I am. I've had this exit. So I've been able to take millions off the table. I have my dream home on the water in Florida. My kids are all thriving. They're all excited about our new life. My husband is doing well. And I moved my parents and I moved my mom, my stepdad, my aunt. Everybody's doing well and helped them all get situated. And I'm massively depressed because
Hmm.
I've lost my who am I? Like
Your
I'm
identity is
yeah, I
tied to
lost my
this.
identity and I got
Yeah.
really depressed and I went back. I remember my real estate agent who's faith-based. She's like, "Amy, like you're so depressed. Like and you have the whole world. Like look at what you've
Yeah.
done and look at what you have. Like why are you so depressed?" And I was so depressed and I got in a funk and I started getting sick again and I started gaining weight again. And she's like, "Where's your Bible? Have you even unpacked your Bible?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And she's like, "Get in the word and then call me in a month. Like quit being
Mm.
depressed, buckle
Mm.
up, put your big girl panties on and get in your Bible and lean into God in this moment." So I did and I got again prayed and I got a word that said, "Take this time and heal yourself." And I was like, "Take this time and heal yourself." Okay. So I need to lose weight and get the inflammation off. No, do the mental work that I'd never done. So the
Mm.
trauma that I experienced in my childhood, I had just buried it. I never shared it with anyone. And I heard a message that was very crystal clear. And ironically, in the town I live in now in Florida, there's a facility that does outpatient work, intensive outpatient work. It is a facility that I did not have access to in Northern California. I could never have done the work I've done here in Northern
Really? Wow.
California.
So it was providential,
Yeah,
basically.
yes. And again, it was like God's the rejection I felt from the venture capitalists was literally God's protection and redirecting my life. And it was
Hmm.
get healed. So I spent 16 months in therapy, which was intensive outpatient therapy 3 times a week, 9 to 15 hours a week,
Oh wow.
and worked on my trauma that I'd never, ever dealt with. I had buried that trauma. And I'm telling you, if you have trauma in your life and you don't deal
Yes.
with it, it will manifest itself in illness. Hence, go back to 2015, the Halloween day, my body attacking itself. And all of a sudden I have lupus like that. That's the trauma I never had dealt with.
That's right.
My
Yeah.
body turned against itself. And doctors after
My
doctors have told me that.
my wife has she's a very wise woman, and she says if the things that you don't deal with in your 20s will catch up with you in your 30s. The
Absolutely.
things that you don't deal with in your 30s will catch up with you in your 40s.
Absolutely.
And every time it's going to get worse until you deal.
Exactly. And
And
in therapy, I learned what happened to me at the age of 12. Every time one of my kids and the two older ones were turning 12 during the times where I was getting sick, it was
oh
like I
wow.
was reliving what happened to me, worried that maybe it would happen to them, but it was like a subconscious thing. Like I didn't even think about it.
Right.
The things that happened to me, I never even shared with my husband. Like didn't even know. And so I had to go into EMDR and a lot of intense therapy. Sorry, a little gnat flying by. Um, and deal with that trauma. And it was very, very difficult. I can remember like coming home from a session and being exhausted and having to take like a 3-hour nap. I mean, it is hard work. The
Yeah,
hardest thing
yeah.
I've ever dealt with. And it took 16 months.
Can you
And
tell us what it was in broad strokes?
um, as far as the therapy goes or what
No, the
happened?
trauma, the
Yeah.
trauma.
So, yeah. So when it goes back to my mom accidentally got pregnant with me. And she actually, I was born in 1970, so I'm almost 55. She actually wanted to get an abortion in Mexico. And so she was headed down to Mexico trying to get an abortion. And my dad convinced her to come back and he married her. But my dad was an alcoholic at that time, eventually a drug addict. And so my mom didn't last long with him. She actually left him when I was 2 years old. So kudos to my mom for being able to do that because, her mom was very much like, you made your bed, you lay in it, no support. So my mom had no support. She's a single mom. She didn't really want me to begin with. And I learned in counseling to forgive because when I became a mom, I started getting really angry with her, thinking about all the things I was doing with my own kids that never happened with me. Like just basic
Yeah,
things like reading a story. I
right.
never remember my mom reading a story. And she managed a bookstore of all things. So I had a lot of resentment towards my mom. The other thing I remember as a child, I never knew what I was going to get when my mom came home from work. So my mom was clinically diagnosed in my therapy group as a rager. And rager, when people
Uh-huh.
come home and they start raging, or anytime they rage, the anger is really usually because they feel scared and they don't have control. And I know looking back, my mom was very scared about keeping a roof over our head and she had no control over her life. Like her life was just,
Yeah,
she had
yeah,
to
that
take
makes
care of
sense.
me. So she would rage. And at the age of 12, my hormones are going nuts and I'm like, I'm done with this. And I ran away from home.
Mm.
And I ran away and I stayed at friends' houses and eventually I ended up with my real dad, my biological dad. My mom wasn't remarried at the time. And that was horrific. He lived in an apartment complex. He was a construction worker by day, a bartender by night, and I'm pretty sure after his shift ended at the bar, he stayed and drank more. He was never home. So I was in this apartment complex. I was down in the hot tub spa and I basically was sexually assaulted by a 22-year-old Marine. Um, and I was 12 years old.
Mm.
I buried that because I blamed myself because I put myself in a really bad situation that I couldn't get out of. Like, and I it was really difficult. On one hand, I appreciate that I ended up living with my dad for a short time because I could see the abuse that he had on his body doing drugs and alcohol. And so I never turned to drugs or alcohol. But I should have probably being on the streets. I mean, there's a couple nights where I slept on a park bench in the park. I mean, it was safe then. I can't even imagine that now. I also can't imagine being a parent with a child gone and not knowing where they were. Like I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. My mom ended up remarrying. I ended up going to live with my aunt and uncle in Gaston, Oregon on a farm. They had no kids, but my aunt was tough love, but also a lot of love. Like she taught me how to sew. She practiced volleyball. She enrolled me in school. We milked cows. We cleaned chicken coops. She taught me how to ride a horse. And you can see I'm getting like all flesh just talking about this experience. It's just
Yeah,
something that I'm
yeah,
starting to feel comfortable sharing. And just on stage, I shared a little bit, and I had so many women come up to me. And I find women
yeah.
and men, not just women, but
And
men too,
man, also, yeah.
that over half of the people that come up to me, like I've been in small masterminds where I've shared the story, and over half of them have had some kind of sexual assault or abuse. So it's it's not that I feel good about hearing that, but I don't feel so alone anymore because I really felt like I'm not going to share the story with anyone because I think this makes me dirty and it makes me like
Yeah, that
unlovable.
it's a self protection
Yeah.
instinct, I guess,
Yeah.
and it usually backfires.
Yeah.
Um,
So bearing that trauma, never even sharing it with my husband or
yeah.
anybody, that's I turned 40 years old and that year I was
Mm.
and it just yeah, it hit me. Actually, in 2015 I was actually 45, but um yeah, so anyways,
It
I'm
caught up with you. Yeah,
yeah,
it
it
caught
caught
up
up
with you.
with me. Yeah.
Interesting. So, can I ask you one thing that you mentioned it in passing, but I thought it was fascinating. I can trace your deep devotion to God and gratitude
Mm,
to that turning point that changed your life on the business level, but also changed your
mhm.
health, changed your sort of self awareness.
Mhm.
And what would you say to people when you share something like, "Hey, I had Bible studies in my team." Tell me about the benefits of that.
So, it's funny how my team came about. So my right-hand person that ended up being like the main person that helped me build Cauliflower to what it was, and now she's back with me with Be Me Beyond Medicine. She was actually my esthetician. So when I was diagnosed with lupus, I was also diagnosed with Sjogren's. Sjogren's
Uh,
affects your eyes, and I couldn't wear eye makeup. So I started getting my lashes done, which was getting lashes put on my lashes.
uh-huh.
Actually not a good idea with Sjogren's, but I did it anyways because I didn't realize it wasn't good. And I knew I couldn't wear mascara. So she was my esthetician. And you get to know somebody when you have your lashes done. You probably don't
That's
know
right.
this, but you're laying
I
on their
don't know
table.
that.
You're laying on their table and your eyes are closed and you're very vulnerable at their, disposal for hours. The full set takes like 3 hours and the fill takes over an hour. So I got to know her name is Jimmy, spelled like Jimi Hendrix, but she's a female. Got to know her really well. She's a pastor's daughter. And she
Ah,
she knew I was a newbie and she would pour into me and I'd ask her questions. And one day I went to see her and she's like, you know what, Amy, I'm shutting my business down because I've got carpal tunnel. I can no longer do
oh,
this. It takes such, intricate with your wrists and so forth. I can't do it. It's painful. I'm going to shut my business down. She owned her own business. I said, well, what are you going to do? And she's like, I think I'm going to take my real estate license. And I said, okay, well, while you're studying, why don't you come work for me? Like, I need help. Why don't you come work for me? And I
oh, that's
wasn't even
cool.
sure what I was going to do with her. Like, I was helping people at these happy hours and stuff, but I wasn't, as you know, I wasn't making any money. But
Yeah.
I had her come and she started helping me and it was incredible. And so the two of us really started to build Cauliflower. Now, my local friends um stopped seeing me really because I was so busy and they're like, "We never see you." And I said, "Well, if you want to see me, you can come work for me because I need help." And so they came and joined and started working and then we drew in like our top customer service rep. He was a worship leader and a youth group counselor, and he came to work with us. And he was phenomenal at customer service. He would take disgruntled customers, and he would focus on them. You know how we always just
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
he would focus on the most disgruntled, upset customer, and turn them around. And he would somehow get them to be an affiliate. Like
Yeah.
they would be very outspoken online about
That's
how
right.
what a
Yeah.
horrible experience they had, their pizza fell apart or whatever, and then
Yeah.
he would convert them and they would be the best testimonials because they wanted to make up for all the negative things they said. And he was so good at that. We were so good at the customer experience and customer reviews that Nestle flew me out and had me talk to their whole corporation, US
Is that
corporation,
right? Oh my
about
gosh.
customer service. Yeah.
How do they
So,
even find out about that? I mean, they must have they must have people sort of
well, we
going,
were
okay, who's
getting,
doing it well?
we were starting to get a lot of write-ups. Matter of
Ah,
fact, the
right.
venture capitalists found me from an MSNBC article that was written. That's
Okay.
how they found me. And just people, also food shows. We were at food shows. Our booths were unconventional. We dragged the farmers market booth, the same one I had in Chico's farmers market, and took it to Expo West. It's like this little, it was like this homemade. I spent $900 making it. Now, if you know anything about Expo West, just to get a space starts at $10,000 and goes on up. And people spend the booth the venture capitalists built for Cali'flour after they bought it cost more than my first house.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
$150,000 for a booth. And I'm bringing my $900 farmer's market booth and we're filling it with fresh flowers and fresh cauliflower and fresh vegetables. It
That's
drew
awesome.
attention because it was
Yeah, it
different.
stood out. It
It
stood
stood
out.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't like all of the other big brands. So we got a lot of attention that way too by bigger companies like Nestle. And actually,
So
that's how
so
we
s-
got into some of the grocery stores like Walmart and
they
Hy-Vee.
paid attention.
Hmm.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So your first team basically, it sort of happened to coalesce around this commonality of faith,
Faith.
right?
And it was
And,
important. Brant, the guy that I never finished that. So excuse me for interrupting for just a moment. I'm going to finish that part. Brant, who was the worship leader who took the disgruntled customers, I said to him, find a book that is business and faith that we can study in a book club. And that's how the book club
okay.
started. So we started with John Maxwell. And I can't remember the last book we did, but that was one way I poured into my team. And by now, when our company was over 21 million and it was number one on Amazon for 16 months straight, not just for cauliflower, but for pizza crust in general. Like we beat out Boboli, Mama Mary's. So we had this whole Amazon group and ended up having like 12 employees. Pretty much, not all, but most were faith based. And I think they were just drawn to that. It wasn't like we discriminated, like, oh, if it wasn't even a question we asked, like, do you believe in God or any of that? It just, I think people were just attracted that came, like the way we met people. Like we hired one girl that we met through Dave Ramsey's event. And it's just, that's just how it ends up. She ended up being my assistant. She was phenomenal. She really helped me with the whole exit. Faith-based person. So yeah, we poured in. I took them to different events. Everything was unconditional, like unconventional, not unconditional. It was unconditional love, but unconventional. Most of the people worked from their home, but we had the office there. If they were a local person, they could go into the office and work if they wanted to. But it wasn't required. And I never had like set hours. It was like, here's the project, let's just get it done. And we became a family. We called ourselves a Cauliflower family. And we also paid it forward, which is one of the 5 things I talk about with business is paying it forward. And so every month an employee would pick a charity and we would donate and they would donate it in their name, which is really cool. So it's not just Cauliflower donating it. It's them getting to pick it.
That's good.
That and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
pouring into your team. If you pour into your team and you invest in them, they'll stay loyal and they'll stay with you. And look,
Yeah.
I
That makes a lot
I
of
couldn't
sense.
pay them a whole lot in the beginning either. Like their heart was to serve, not to make a ton of money.
Well, I'm sure because I've experienced similar things several times. When you're building something and you have a vision, the vision attracts not the money. The vision
Yes.
is the thing that people want meaning.
Yes.
People want to be part of something significant,
Yeah.
something that is growing, going somewhere. And they understand that the money might not be there now, but they go, you know what, the money will follow because I believe this is a superior
The
service or
money
product.
will follow.
Yeah,
If you try to do
yeah,
it for money, it's probably going to fail. But if you do it for like I feel like I'm always serving the person I once was. It seems like
yeah.
cauliflower came about because I need to be gluten-free, grain-free. Soursop, that story is pretty nothing short of miraculous and definitely God's hand on it. I happened to sit
Okay,
next
so
to a
let me
woman.
stop you for a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
I want to extract a little bit more value from the childhood to the post
Mhm.
cell, because I'm very interested in this. So, okay, you had this traumatic experience. You didn't tell anybody. It sort of lives in your body, catches up with you. It doesn't go away. I mean, and it never does actually. So, you have this turning point with the business. You sell the business, and then is it the emptiness, almost like, okay, I don't have this, I'm not busy
Mm.
with this, that that
Honestly,
that sort of triggered that memory again, and it flared up and you sort of descended into like a little plateau,
mm,
or is it just that, is it that I was very busy, I have this focus, and now this is done, and there's like this empty space and it gets filled with the trauma? or is it my identity was elevated artificially somewhat, perhaps, or
Hmm.
partially artificially to be associated with the business, and not that the business is gone. And also, there's some injustices that were made,
Hmm.
about being essentially pushed out of the company, email logins frozen, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, they dealt with you, quote unquote, right? In a way that is
Exactly.
less than loving. Let's put it that way. Very,
Yes.
very, very
Less than
mildly.
loving, definitely.
So it's almost like this. Your identity was connected to this, and you had imagined a journey beyond the sell because you believed in
Hmm.
the business and the product and the
Oh, yeah.
idea behind it and all of that. And now the very sort of soul of it, for lack of a better word, is
Hmm.
removed from it. You can't share your faith. There's all this pressure
Yeah.
against the things which is the very cause of the thing happening in the first place.
To begin with. Yeah.
So the identity and the business. What do you think triggered the downfall, the descending into illness again and depression? And the reason I tell you this is because this is a classic thing,
Hmm.
right? You
Hmm.
build something, you literally
Yes.
put your life into something, and then
Yes.
you make a pivot, you sell, or you want to build something new, and that whole thing just almost like drags behind you, as like these chains.
Yeah. It was,
It's happened to
I
me.
think,
I see it
yeah.
happen a lot. Can you, like, in hindsight, can you tell me what was it exactly, and how did you heal from that?
It's interesting because I often will say, and this kind of um, doesn't do it justice. You said it so much better than I did, but I often will say that Cauliflower was my fourth child.
Hmm.
And now that my kids are older and grown, I feel like Cauliflower was dating somebody I didn't like. Like if your child's dating somebody you don't like, which I love.
That's a good
I
one.
love who my child's dating.
Yeah.
She's great.
Yeah.
But it's like the more you go to that child and try to prevent them from getting hurt or the damage that this person they're dating is doing,
Yeah.
the more they push you away.
Yeah.
So the more I could see things changing and the more I tried to correct it with the venture capitalists, the more they pushed me away.
Mm.
For example, email was a huge revenue source for us. And email, you own your own email. So any of your people that are in business that are listening, if you don't have an email list, do everything you can to start one
Yes.
because you own that. And your social media can be taken away from you. So we had been generating like $6 million in sales off of email, and they just completely let the email go.
They did?
And if you don't, yes, they just never groomed it, never wrote emails. Their whole goal was grocery store only.
Okay.
And the problem with that is the margins are horrible in grocery, and you needed to keep that business like email and the online business going to support the grocery
Yeah,
store,
you
but
want the
they
direct to
didn't.
consumer piece to be very,
Yeah,
very
and
strong.
I loved being the face of the email. Like it was my email,
Hmm.
my name at the bottom, and I remember our CMO who they hired said to me, "You have a really big ego. You want to make this company all about you and your brand, and it's not." And I said, "Well, it is in a way because a lot of the people buying this product related to
Yeah,
me.
it's trust.
There are people that are, yeah, I've built trust, I've built a community. And by you not serving that community and not making, like, we went from having 6 customer service reps to one. If you don't take care of the customer, we're going to die on the vine, which is what happened. But I felt like I was mourning the loss
Mm.
of like a human. Like I literally, when my grandmother passed away, I mourned her death terribly. I was very close to her. And that's how I felt. I was like mourning, like I was grieving a loss. And so, what's the best way to get out of that funk or that depression when you're grieving? It's to serve others. And so,
Yeah.
I started doing research on a whole new, like cauliflower was not popular, right? It was the last veggie standing on a veggie tray. Nobody liked cauliflower. I had so many doors slammed in my face when I originally started. Like people are like, we don't even sell that vegetable very much. When I was trying to get into grocery,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not a popular vegetable, so there's no way a pizza crust is going to make it.
That's right.
And so here I am. I'm seeing a new fruit that is not popular at all. It's really ugly. Cauliflower is ugly. It smells bad when you cook it. this fruit is so ugly, but it's so powerful. And what's great about cauliflower is it's bland, so it'll take on any flavors. So like my cookbook's 125 recipes using cauliflower. And usually my whole goal was to make a recipe where you didn't taste the cauliflower. Because honestly, I didn't really like the taste of
Oh, I
cauliflower.
don't
And
like
it's not,
cauliflower either. Yeah.
I know, and it's not a vegetable I ever bought
Yeah, me
before
neither. Me
this.
neither. Not at all.
So
Not even a
I
little bit. Yeah.
I was like, I have to get out of my funk. I have to start serving others. So I started doing during COVID, I did brick and mortar to click and order. I started helping failed like businesses that were failing that were brick and mortar only
Hmm.
go online. That was very fulfilling. I did a Warriors Women event where I gave away scholarships to women that were just starting their businesses. That was rewarding, but none of it was filling me completely. I still was very depressed.
Mm.
And so going through that therapy really helped, but it was, I can remember at the time not thinking it was helping, thinking that I was just like going back to a place I never wanted to go back to again. I didn't think that the healing needed to be there. But to answer your question, yes, I felt rejection. I remember feeling rejection when I was a kid, not having a mom or a dad that really wanted me. And those feelings, I felt those feelings
Yeah.
again. Like the head of the venture capitalist, I saw him as a father figure, much older than me, hugely successful in the food industry, talking to me as though I'm this person that he's going to groom and we're going to make this massive company and then sell it to like a Nestle or, like Siete just sold for $1 billion to Pepsi,
Right.
something like that. And he really gave me all these false hopes. So when he put me on sabbatical and changed my passwords and no longer communicated with me, it was like,
Oh my gosh.
oh,
Yeah.
this is what I felt
That
like.
that is betrayal from a father figure.
Well,
How?
even my lawyer was like, my
Yeah.
lawyer who didn't know me personally, the lawyer dealing with all of this,
Yeah.
he's like, Amy, what's your relationship like with your dad? And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
with my real dad, I don't have one.
Yeah. Makes
Um,
sense.
because I had to disown that relationship, which I regret now, and he's passed away. But I had to get him out of my life because of the drugs and alcohol. And he's like, yeah, you're having daddy issues with the venture
The
capitalist. He
VC
said the
guy.
name.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, I can see that. You looked up to him like a father figure, and now they're pushing you away so they can do their agenda and get, and
Yeah.
they own the majority of the company.
Hmm.
So I didn't really have a say. And if I can, I spent a lot of time complaining about them,
Hmm.
but I can really say that I'm grateful for them now. And I'm grateful for that time to be on sabbatical because COVID hit. My kids were at home. I was able to be with them. I was able, like on recess, we would go fishing because we lived on the water because, the kids are at home during COVID. And I had such an amazing time that I didn't appreciate at the
At
time.
the
I
time.
was
Yeah.
resentful of.
Yeah.
And now I can look back and thank them. And I remember when they put me on sabbatical, they were like, look, you need to have a rest. You've been working super hard
Hmm.
and you're not thinking clearly,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
insulted me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, but they had an agenda and they had a foundation they wanted to build, and it was very different than what I had built. And
Yeah.
yeah,
They had their own agenda. So okay. So this is super valuable. Very very valuable. What would you say to me or to anyone listening, right, about the importance of dealing, really
Mm.
having sort of maintaining and growing your inner game while you're practicing this all-consuming outer game, which is building a business, right? Because
Yeah,
clearly, do you see the interplay is you can think of it as unimportant, right? What does daddy issues, parenting, trauma have to do with cauliflower pizza? Like,
yeah,
does it influence the ROI? And it does.
it greatly
It
does.
greatly does. Like
And
in on the level in this particular case, probably tens of millions of dollars.
yes, very much.
You know?
And here's one piece of advice that I have learned, and since this time I have put myself in these rooms and I've made sure I've done this. You must invest in yourself.
Yeah.
You must have you must be coached. Even if you're a coach, even if you think you've got it all together, you must have somebody like what you do
Yeah.
in your life It's imperative. Like nobody gets it in traditional business. Like my husband, he's like, well, I don't need somebody. No, no, you do. You have to be in masterminds. You have to pour into yourself. Your growth directly affects the growth of your business, the growth of your
Exactly.
children,
You are
everything.
the asset.
Exactly.
You
So
are
you
the
must
main
pour into
asset.
yourself.
Absolutely.
And that is one of the biggest lessons I learned during that time is I have got to invest time in my healing and in myself.
Mm.
I have to do what my parents weren't able to do. I have to change. I have to be the change. And I need to look. One of the things that really helped me get through it, and you hear people say this all the time, but you got to find the way to do it. But finding gratitude, like I wrote a gratitude list every single day on the venture capitalist to get over them
Oh
and
my.
on my mom
Oh, that's so
and on
courageous
my
of you.
mom
Yeah.
and my dad. So I would write out what I was grateful for. And, you get to choose to forgive people, but the healing is a whole process. And
Healing is
and it's
forgiveness is not a moment in time,
no, it's not.
right?
But it is a choice.
It is a choice.
And then the healing is definitely a
Yeah.
process. And that's what I went through. And I don't think I could be where I am today without it and without like a mentor in my life and without a mastermind guiding me to see a bigger picture.
Hmm.
And then, of course, all the counseling, which counseling deals with the past and a mentor deals with the
With the
future,
future, yeah.
I think.
That's
Yeah.
how I see
So,
coaching versus counseling. Same thing. Yeah,
exactly.
it's
Yeah.
building a new future. That's coaching.
Yeah.
But counseling
And
is super important because if you don't really figure out, deal, heal from the past, it's hard to build a new future.
yeah, I remember the first day I went to EMDR, no idea what EMDR
Yeah.
was, and she did tapping.
Hmm.
I'm like, "This is so woo-woo." I said that, I was so resistant. I'm like,
Yeah.
"This tapping thing is not gonna help me, and this is woo-woo, and I really don't wanna go where you're taking me."
Exactly.
But you know what? Fast forward, it was the best of all of the classes I took and all of the therapy sessions I had. It was one of the best because eventually I could see myself as a third party.
Yeah.
I'm like looking at myself and I can see where I was a victim and I now can be, I don't have to be a victim
You don't have to
anymore.
remain a victim. Yeah.
No, you don't have to remain
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
victim. It wasn't my fault. I was 12 years old. I
Yeah.
was a
Of
child.
course.
It wasn't my fault. Could forgive myself. And that's another thing. Before you forgive others, to truly forgive others, you've got to forgive yourself.
Mm.
And so I had to do that, forgive myself for putting myself in a bad spot, forgive myself for running away from my mom and doing that to her, forgive myself for some of the things I did to the venture capitalists too. Like,
Mm.
I made it I made their lives difficult at one point because I so didn't believe in them and I gave them the keys to something that meant so much to me. So forgiving yourself is huge. And without that, and without forgiving others, and without having some kind of gratitude, like you can forgive when you start looking, like when I started looking at what the venture capitalists actually did for me and started being grateful for the things that they actually did, then I could forgive the things of basically destroying the company in my mind. Even to this day, I still think that they destroyed that company.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm grateful for them in my lives, and I can see why they were in my life now.
Yeah, because it,
Yeah.
it it shaped you. It shaped you into
Mhm.
something different. And although there's
Mhm.
definitely a sense of loss of something that you've built,
Yeah.
I think it's building your future anyway, regardless of what they did to
Yeah.
that particular entity.
And I didn't share this part, but I'll share it now. When they fired my team, those lifelong friends that I had no longer would speak to me because they got
Oh,
fired. They poured into this company. They weren't getting
oh.
paid. They didn't have, I mean, they were getting paid, but not very much. They didn't have shares in the company.
Hmm.
And then they see me sell the company, move across the country, and buy a dream house. And they were mourning the loss of being fired. Like, why didn't she get fired? Why didn't she fight for us? Which I did. I fought for them hard.
Oh my gosh,
And
that's
I
terrible.
did give each of them some money. I gave Jimmy a huge amount of money. Didn't have to, but I felt like I needed to. Now, fast forward, I go through a lot of treatment. So I'm alone, right? I'm very alone. Like
Yeah.
before COVID hit, the kids are thriving, everybody's doing their own thing, and I don't have a team that'll even talk to me anymore.
Oh my
And I feel
gosh.
so alone.
That's
And then
terrible.
I've got a new team, the venture capitalist team that they put in, and four of them were their relatives, which was really hard. And they all don't like me. So I've got the people that loved me, that we built this great company together.
They
It was
won't
a
talk to
together
you.
thing.
The new
They're not
people.
talking to
Oh
me.
my gosh, that's terrible.
My family's thriving. So literally what I would do is I would pretend to be happy, get my kids off to school. This is right before COVID. And then cry all day, cry and feel sorry for myself all day long. And before everybody got home, I would go put makeup on and pretend like I was happy again.
Mm.
And they eventually saw through it and they were like, you need to get some help. And
Yeah.
that was the best thing I ever did. But yeah, I can look at I have so much gratitude to my mom. Yeah, she didn't read stories to me. We didn't have family dinners, but she did the best she could and with what she had, and she had so little.
Yeah.
And I know she's like my grandma used to make my clothes, and my mom would spend time like fixing my hair and trying to, you know, just she did the best she could, and she didn't abandon me, and she could have, but I abandoned her.
Mm.
And so I had to forgive myself on that as well.
Wow. So tell me about the aha moment of that became the beginning of Be Me and the soursop fruit.
Yeah, so again, I think it's such a God thing. He's again, I'll say it again, the rejection I felt from the venture capitalists was really my protection and redirection. So I'm sitting excuse me, and it's during COVID time, and I've been doing those other little businesses and been experimenting with protein shakes, like creating maybe a protein shake and for kids because my kids were athletes. And I'm in a session, a counseling session, and it's like a group session, and this woman is sitting next to me. And after the session, we start talking, and it turns out that she's there because her daughter had cancer. We live an hour away from Disney World. Her daughter was at Disney World in high school, and she started having really bad back pain. And they figured she just had back pain from a ride, but they ended up having to take her to the doctor. And it turns out she had cancer in the spine. And so I was talking about cauliflower and creating like cauliflower. And she was like, wow, you know what? I used this superfruit soursop when my daughter was in remission, when she was doing her cancer treatments. Actually, she wasn't even in remission yet. And I made this tea out of these soursop leaves. My uncle lives in the Caribbean. He was sending them to me. Pretty soon, I'm making them for everybody, all the parents that had kids in the cancer center, because her daughter had lesions on the back of her throat from radiation and chemo, and she couldn't eat.
Mm.
And then she also had them on her rectum. So it was very painful to go to the bathroom. Well, she was drinking the soursop tea and it cleared up the lesions. And it also cleared up like all of the swelling that she was having. And she was talking about what a miraculous fruit it was and the leaves, and that maybe she should do something like I did with the cauliflower. And I said, yeah, you should. And then right after that happened, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, okay.
So I remember this conversation. I start doing research on this fruit. And I'm like, okay, and then not only did my mom get diagnosed with breast cancer, within a month, Jimmy, my right-hand person, was diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, at this point, Jimmy is talking to me. She's not talking to me anymore.
Okay.
And she too had breast cancer. So she was going holistic with her treatment. My mom was doing traditional radiation chemo. So I started researching this fruit that I remember, hearing from this woman. And I started taking it as well. And it was hard to find the fruit. It was like $15.99 a pound. You had to import it in. And one piece of fruit was like $100. And I'm like, Mom,
Seriously?
you have to
Wow.
yeah,
Where does it grow?
so expensive. So it grows in Hawaii, Jamaica, the Caribbean. Now they're growing a little bit of it in Miami, but it's like $15.99 a pound. It is so expensive. And
Interesting.
so I started eating it myself and I saw that it was helping my inflammation. And I'm like, wow, there's something to this fruit. And then I found a place where I could source it from out of Brazil, of all places. And I incorporated it with the manufacturer that I was working with on the shakes, the protein shakes. And I said, can you make me a shake using these ingredients, which was soursop and Irish sea moss. And then I added turmeric and other milk thistle and lion's mane and other ingredients that were superfoods that I had been experimenting with for my own condition. I reached out to that woman. We became friends. I said, do you want to partner and let's get this product out to everybody? And unfortunately, it didn't work out for her to partner with me, but she gave me the blessing like you should definitely take this to the next level. And she's one of our brand ambassadors, and her daughter is in remission and graduated from high school and is now full scholarship at LSU. So that's a huge success story. And now we've launched Soursop Nutrition mainly because I saw it as like a miracle fruit. My mom was a type 2 diabetic and she was on Ozempic for her diabetes. She
Okay.
got off of Ozempic. Um, she had went through her cancer treatment. She's clear of cancer. She ended up getting a little bit of a spot on her lymph node under her armpit and it went away. I started massively giving her lots of soursop. I'm not saying soursop cured it at all. I can't say that, but if you Google it, there are articles out there that talk about what it does in rats for cancer cells.
Interesting.
So again, I can't ever promote it for cancer, but that was the initial reason that I fell in love with it. And then for me, for the inflammation and gut health and anxiety, all of that, it helps tremendously. My daughter's in college. She takes it for anxiety, especially right before tests. Although I tell her, you've got to take it every day because it needs to remain in your system. Like it has to build up in your
Hmm.
system. We call it nature's new Ozempic. We don't say Ozempic because we say semaglutide, but
Yeah, yeah.
because Ozempic is a trademark name. It is a miracle fruit. And again, I would have never found that had I not been rejected in God's protection and redirecting me to healing. I would have never met her. I would have never discovered that fruit. And it's crazy how life works.
Wow.
It's just crazy.
So what stage is the company in now? Are you shipping? Is it one
So
product? Is it a line of products?
so we had the world's first soursop gummy. And so we are all online right now. We have a very popular grocery store that we're doing an application for. I can't say because I don't want to ruin it. But if we get in there, that'll open all kinds of doors to grocery. I haven't pursued grocery heavily because I see e-commerce as a way to like fine tune your product and get it ready and also build that community and that family again. So we're in community building. We have some brand ambassadors that have every brand ambassador has a story of why they love this fruit and they know about the fruit. It's not because we pay more than any other supplement company. It is literally because they have a story. Like Danny Class, she's on TikTok and Instagram. Her mom died of cancer. She knew about the fruit. She found out about the fruit after her mom, but she is very passionate about what the fruit does. So she talks about it all the time. We pay her a certain amount of money for a certain amount of posts, but she goes well beyond that.
Mm.
And she's as passionate about the brand. She could care less about the money. She has a story about the brand and she loves it. So we have many ambassadors like that. So it's really about building the family right now and then expanding the growth. To answer your question, we have the gummies. We also have 4 different shakes. And the shakes have a lot of superfoods. It's not just so the gummies have echinacea, elderberry, and soursop. The shakes have mass amounts of ingredients, which I already said, but they have turmeric, milk thistle, elderberry, goji berry, blueberries, magnesium. We've added extra vitamins, soursop, Irish sea moss. So they're really, I call them a boost. They're not even really a shake. It's like a food boost. I use it in smoothies. I put it in a yogurt. We can make muffins out of it, soup. We have all kinds of recipes on our website. The goal is to launch Electrolytes, which are coming out in January.
Oh, interesting.
I feel like it's really important. Electrolytes. I learned the importance of electrolytes. After that, we have a whole skincare line that's coming out because Irish sea moss and soursop together, it does cell regeneration. So not only does it is it healing on the inside, but it's also healing on the outside. So we have a topical skincare line, but we also have a internal skincare line like a gummy for skin and hair. And then my husband's board certified in sleep. So I said, I can't take melatonin or any kind of sleep prescription meds. And I've struggled with sleep, especially before I dealt with my trauma. I would have nightmares and anxiety and have trouble sleeping. And so he helped me come up with a formula that we've been testing for a couple of years, has no melatonin in it, but it's really about getting back to your regular sleep rhythm and not altering that. And that is through a shake and a gummy, but also we're going to have an app, and it's really just about getting back on your regular sleep rhythm. And then we also have Soursop Slim, which is weight management, not weight loss per se, although people are losing weight. It's weight management. I don't like to talk about weight loss
I
because I
get it.
had an eating disorder as well. I
That
used to
makes
binge
sense.
eat.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Before I dealt with my trauma, I was a binge eater.
So where do
That's
you
a whole
see
other episode.
where do you see your the this new thing, right? BME, soursop, all of the stuff that fills the gap between sort of unhealthy foods and
Yeah.
Western medicine, essentially. Where do you
So,
see that in 3 to 5 years?
oh, well, let me give your viewers a little tip here. Um, the FDA allows a 20% variance on our foods in the grocery stores. So, what does that mean? That means that your recipe, or excuse me, your ingredient list, your nutritional profile could be 20%. It could have 20% more sugar, hydrogenated oil. You don't have to claim it. The FDA
Wow,
allows a
seriously?
20% variance. And I saw that when I was heavy in the food industry. I saw big brands take advantage of that 20% variance. I want to stay authentic and true. I've never utilized that. I want to stay completely true. What you see on the back of our ingredients is what we have in our ingredients. There's no 20% variance. So I want to stay authentic with all of our product lines. I think that's how you build a true community,
Hmm.
not mop, not, well, let me just say this. There's 11 companies that own 70% of the food that's in the grocery store right now.
Really?
So, oh yeah, only 11 companies, and they're like Pepsi,
And of course, they have
Coca-Cola,
then they have
Kellogg's.
control, right?
Yes, and a portion of them, and I can't quote the exact portion, but I should know that number, have direct influence, if not own certain drugs as well, medications. So, for example, there is, I believe it's Pepsi owns a diabetic medication. Interesting.
Huh.
Right? Why would a food own a diabetic medication? Like, I believe,
That's
call me a
fascinating.
conspiracy theorist, whatever. The FDA thing, you can Google that. You'll see that. Um, I believe the food industry is just helping us stay sick in the United States. If you look at other countries, which I know you know this, you go to Italy, I can eat a pizza in Italy,
Oh,
no
you can
problem.
feel the difference.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. No
You can
inflammation. Eat a
no
pizza
inflammation.
here,
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah.
So I believe this product helps, but basically, if you take this product, I believe on so many levels, whether it's depression, anxiety, gut health, I believe it prevents you from getting on the medications. It's known to lower blood pressure and to lower blood
Hmm.
sugars. So you do have to be careful if you're already on a medication for that. You need to talk to your doctor. This is not a medication, it's a superfood. It was really expensive. So I was able to put it into a supplement as clean as possible
Yeah.
using not using ingredients like my competitors now are using China. It's highly processed. It comes as a white powder. No, we're getting it sourced from Brazil. It's
Mm.
like ground up leaves. It's like very authentic. And I believe it's going to prevent you from having to go, we're lacking stuff in the food industry in the United States that causes us to get on medications for different ailments. I believe this superfruit, vitamin, whatever you want to call it, supplement, shake boost. People call it all kinds of things. Fruit snack, because you can eat more than two of the gummies. You can eat the
Yeah.
whole bag. I believe that's going to prevent people from getting on certain medications. Now, I probably get shut down by the FDA for saying that, but I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in my family's life and friends, and we're currently getting ready to start a double-blind placebo-controlled study to show what it does on blood sugars and blood pressure and anxiety levels. So we'll have that study out, which will be great. It's not using thousands of people, unfortunately. To do a study just with 80 to 100 people is a couple $100,000. It's
Right.
very expensive.
Yeah.
On the skincare, we're going to do a biopsy study where just with like 6 people, where they actually take a little piece off their face and study it, a
Mm-hmm.
little tiny, like nothing major.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and study that skincare line. So we're going to do that. That's a very expensive test. We work with some dermatologists out of New York for that. So, yeah, that's how I'm going to differentiate myself from a typical supplement company, because right now they're not really heavily regulated. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are just putting it out there, right? Just
Yeah.
creating a product. I was shocked we were the first soursop gummy on the market. And within a couple months, people had them out. And I'm like, they haven't studied it. I spent like 2 years studying it. They
Right. Yeah.
haven't studied it.
Yeah.
They got their products from China and they're putting it out there. And it's just, yeah.
Do you ever feel like something's holding you back from reaching your full potential? I'm giving away free access to my Exponential Scorecard. It's the same tool I use with clients to uncover strengths and reveal hidden areas that might be holding you back. It's a powerful first step towards real growth. You can access your personalized assessment at exponential.life/score. Well, I think what you even mentioned now, it's really fascinating because on one hand, I think overregulation hurts
Yes,
us,
I
right,
agree.
collectively.
I agree.
And on the other hand, okay, so if you don't have an enough level of regulation, nothing is ideal, obviously. But even if you have a lot of regulation, you can have monopolies. What you said, I had no idea that
Yeah.
11
Monopoly.
companies own
70% of,
70%. That's
mhm.
crazy. I
Yep.
mean, that's definitely a problem, I think.
Yeah.
And still, I would say in this new world where you can literally speak and reach anyone, anywhere, at any time, the trust that people have not in a logo or a brand but in a person,
Exactly.
it's what matters, and it's what
Yes.
this is what you're doing. This is personal
Mhm.
brand development that is, I think, the best and the most, I would say, profoundly human thing. We
Yes.
don't trust brands, we trust people.
Exactly. And
You,
that's why when somebody says to me, well, what food products should I buy? I say, look at the story of the founder. Where
yeah,
did they come from? And then, like
exactly.
Siete Foods, that's a great story. It's a great family. They're a great family. Now,
Hmm.
if Pepsi doesn't alter that product and jack it up, it's going to continue to be a great product, even though Pepsi owns it. It's important to look at the founder. What's their story? What was their motivation? She did not create Siete Foods for $1 billion valuation, just as I didn't create
Exactly.
Cauliflower Foods to create $1 billion category. She created it because she needed to be gluten free and she couldn't find any products out there. So, about the same time I was creating
Yeah.
cauliflower, a couple years before, actually, I didn't know about her because she wasn't all over the grocery stores. So I never knew about her until I got in the food industry. But again, a great story, great founder, and that's what you need to look at when
That's
you're going to
wonderful.
consume
Yeah.
products, including supplements, because Goli, what's Goli's real story? Look at the sugar content in Goli. And we know what sugar does to people,
Yeah.
and you don't just eat 2 Golis, you got to eat 6 to 10 apple cider vinegar Goli gummies. And this isn't to rip on Goli, but I studied them a lot because they've been extremely successful and their marketing is very good, but it's like eating a candy bar. So you just need to be careful. You need to look at the ingredients, you need to look at the founder, you need to look at the story.
And I think
For sure.
bottom line is, if you trust the person and the person you know
Yeah.
has enough ownership, enough control over the product, you can rest easy. And I think
And
that's an
are
important
they going to be
piece.
willing to put in the effort and the time and the money to differentiate themselves, like doing this
Yeah. Yeah.
study? Like a lot of people, they're just in for the money. So they're not going to spend $200,000 on a study.
Yeah.
So,
Of course. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, Amy, thanks for coming on. And this
Yeah.
is
Thank
this is
you.
I just I think it's an incredible story. You are an incredible person.
Thank you so much for letting me share my story.
Great news. If you're a subscriber to Headspace, get an incredible 20% off of soursupnutrition.com products with the code Headspace20.